Welcome, everybody, to our first episode of the Unveil Your Voice podcast. I'm Christine Irwin, and I will be your host today. I wanted to just give you a short disclaimer that today we are discussing some items that might be particularly triggering to you. So our main goal is that you practice self-care. So if you ever feel that you need to pause or you feel that you need to rewind, fast forward, whatever you need to do to care for yourself, should you feel triggered during the episode, by all means, please take care of yourself. But we are so excited to have our guest on today. I can't wait to introduce you to her. She is absolutely amazing, smart, and a lot of fun to talk to. So get ready, get set, have your hearts prepared, because we are so excited to unveil your voice with you. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. See you on the other side. My name is Christine Irwin, and I'm the founder of the nonprofit Voices of Hope. Our mission is to change our culture one voice at a time through education, campaigns, and kindness. Each week, I will share an inspiring interview from individuals who have overcome trauma and seek to make a change in the world. Hear them now as they unveil their voice. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Unveil Your Voice podcast. We're really excited to introduce our guest for today. So we can't thank you enough for being here listening with us. So today we're welcoming Rashonda Wilson. She's the founder of I'm a Survivor, Inc. And I'm a Survivor, Inc. encourages, empowers, and educates minority women and the communities in the Detroit area on sexual assault awareness. Rashonda, welcome.
Hi. How's it going?
It's going good. How are you today?
Oh, just peachy.
Well, we are so excited to have you here and taking the time out of your day to come join us, and really excited for our listeners to. I know we've been in connection now for a while, and just what I know about your organization already, I'm just really excited for our listeners to learn more about I'm a Survivor, Inc. So I can't thank you enough for being here today.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad that we're partnering up so that we can help survivors.
Yeah.
That's really huge for me. Just, working together so we can, fight the cause and help people heal through this journey.
Yep. No, exactly. And that's really what it comes down to. So, well, let's jump right in. And I always like to do this question first. This is usually the first question I ask. And the reason I do this question first is because I know that when I experienced my own trauma, when I was raped, that I felt like I didn't have a lot of resources. I mean, granted, this was over 15 years ago. And I just felt like I did not have the resources available to me like there are today. So I know that there are so many reasons on why people start organizations. So we want to know, Rashonda, tell us why did you start I'm a Survivor, Inc.?
Well, when I got sexually assaulted, I was seeking support groups, and I was an adult when this happened. So I noticed that there weren't hardly any support groups for adult women, only support groups for like children, teenagers, and college kids. So luckily, I came across the Sasha Center. And the Sasha Center provided a support group for minority women. And they were so good to me. Like, they provided the tools for healing. They even equipped me with tools for starting a support group. They also supported me during my highs and my lows during my trial. Wow. So I felt like we were really a close-knit, like, family. Like, they were just there for me, and I was just blown away. But also there was an educational part to it. And the educational part, like, we talked about like how rape affects African American women. And one in particular session, we talked about the myths, the stereotypes, and the stigmas. And when I tell you, I was so alarmed to hear these stigmas, it just made everything so uncomfortable. But here are a few that like pricked my heart. So the first one was that Black women could not get raped. The second one was that Black women were the reason for being raped. And the
Wow.
third one was that rape discussed in the Black family was taboo. I was so
Wow.
disgusted to know that our society still perpetuates these beliefs that have been rooted in slavery. So
Wow.
I thought about my ancestors and I thought, like Black women slaves, like they were raped often, if not every
Mhm.
single day. And
Ugh.
even like threatened, like if you say anything, I'm going to either
Mhm.
kill you, whip you, or lynch you, whatever the case may
Mhm.
be. So they didn't have the support from the law. They
Mhm.
didn't have the support from the family. So ultimately, their voices were suppressed. They were
Yeah.
silenced.
Ugh.
So the only thing that they went, the only kind of like refuge or sanctuary was going to God to heal their wounds.
Mhm.
So I know for me, God is there and I believe in God, but you're
Mhm.
still alone.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about, my ancestors having to, fight through the trauma and the healing all by themselves. Like
Yeah.
that was huge for me. So then
Mhm.
I so then I started thinking about this same narrative being passed on to when they became free. So when they
Mhm.
became free, it was a whole new ball game. Like their husbands started raping them, or then you
Mhm.
had the white supremacist groups like the Klansmen or the white
Mhm.
cops that were abducting them and raping them.
Wow.
So still, society still wasn't protecting them. They still
Mhm.
didn't have a voice. So some have died without actually receiving the justice that they deserved.
Wow.
So then I'm thinking to myself, like, this trauma has manipulated the DNA of Black women as well as the
Mhm.
DNA of America. So now we
Mhm.
have a generation of Black women who don't know when they're being raped, or they
Mhm.
don't want to tell that they're being raped, or then you have like a whole Black population that just believes that, oh, well, Black women cannot be raped, or what did they do? Why were they acting fast? I mean, if
Mhm.
you just think about like the R. Kelly, surviving R. Kelly, like
Yeah.
everybody were blaming the victims, the
Mhm.
survivors, instead of him.
Yep.
So I was thinking like how society just keeps on just blaming Black women for being raped, and it just didn't sit too well with me. It just bothered me to my
Mhm.
core.
Yeah.
So that's why I founded I'm a Survivor Incorporated, so that I can encourage and empower women of color who are
Mhm.
survivors to tell their stories, to give them the tools to heal, and to challenge these stigmas and these stereotypes so that we can change how society looks at Black women. Because I
Mhm.
mean, that's obviously still the problem
Yeah.
today.
Mhm. No,
So
exactly.
that's why I started I'm a Survivor Incorporated, and I'm very much passionate about this. I mean, I want to help all women, but of
Sure.
course, I want to help minority women too.
Mhm. No, wow. I mean, it's one of those things that, and I'm not, and I think of my own heritage and my own history, and I recently got to attend a conference where they had a speaker who talked about her heritage, and she was discussing just about like slavery and her ancestors that had to, she talked a lot about Martin Luther King and different things of that nature, and how her ancestors and her have struggled to come where they are today now. And
Hmm.
obviously she wasn't talking about the stigmas around sexual assault in the minority populations, just more so the heritage in general, or the history in general. And but it's one of those things that actually it truly like made me want to turn around and look in my own history, and not that I haven't done it before, but I wasn't as passionate about as I was now. And so to see and hear what you're saying about how, I mean, the stigmas you were saying just like were like blew my mind. Like I
Yeah, but I and it blew my mind too. But see, I always wondered because growing up, you hear, well, I know I heard, oh, she's acting fast, even when she's like 12, like
Mhm.
11, 12 years old, she's acting fast. And acting fast is a way of saying, well, look how she's dressed, or look what she's saying, look what she's
Okay.
doing. She's attracting this sexual attention, or she's being promiscuous, or whatever the
Mhm.
case may be. That's what
Yep.
acting fast means.
Yeah.
So this here, I always heard this like in my family, and
Yep.
I'm like, trying to understand like where is this coming from? And now, I know like this here has been passed down from
Yep.
generation to generation. We have these this veil over our eyes, and we're not realizing that this is wrong. We
Mhm.
should not be saying that these little kids are fast, or that what they're doing is fast, because we're technically victimizing them.
Yep. No, exactly. Well,
But
and
I do encourage you to look into your history too, because you might find some things that are alarming too.
mhm. No, exactly. And that's definitely like why, I've started to do some research. Don't get me wrong, I've done research and just more as to, names of individuals, just to learn my family tree, but
Hmm.
not specifically more like diving deep into the heritage. But yeah, that just, I mean, it's that's the one thing too, like you said, like these are things that you heard when you were younger, and so from a young age, these stigmas are already built into our brains. And so for you starting I'm a Survivor Inc., I mean, this is breaking the cycle. This is what
Yes.
we're working towards. This is what we're trying to do. This is what you're doing. And so to see that, it's one of those things too where I always think of like, you think of something, usually something that has happened to you or anybody for that matter, and usually, something unfortunate, but that it puts that fire in you
Yes.
to want to
Yes.
make that change, you know?
Yes.
Um, so I just, like I said, the what you just told us with the stigmas and the myths, like that just that struck me too, because I think our culture, just even as a whole, just still does not understand.
Don't get it
There,
at all.
no,
Don't get it. No,
nope.
not at all. And the crazy part is like how I want to just say that like Black women, how they're viewed on TV. That
Yeah.
bothers me so much, like as far as like the videos and
Mhm.
just being objects. Like that's
Mhm.
so problematic. Like that sexual harassment, if you want to get technical about it, like that sexual harassment, sexual violence, the way that they're being portrayed on TV, and
Yep.
then it's ingrained in the children. Like the children
Mhm.
think it's okay that they're
Yeah.
dancing like that, or that they're being half dressed, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
There, it's a negative view of how Black women are portrayed on TV. It's objectified.
Mhm. It is. Well, and that's kind of leads me to this next question a little bit too, just as refer like talking about our our culture and how they view sexual violence and whatnot. So, obviously we've had the Me Too movement come up in the last few years.
Hmm.
This has given a lot of attention on sexual abuse. I mean, we know that this didn't Me Too just didn't start in a couple years ago. It was back in 2006. But with that said, and Me Too being so prevalent now, do you feel that the Me Too movement is enough, or will help still bring more things to the surface? What are your thoughts around the Me Too movement and how that has maybe shifted our culture, or has not even changed our culture at all?
Well, I think the Me Too movement was a great step in the right direction,
Mhm.
because it exposed the ugly truth and forced America to have these uncomfortable conversations. We're
Mhm.
starting to hold, men accountable for these atrocities.
Yeah.
Viola Davis, she had this interesting quote. She says, "Sexual assault is everywhere."
Mhm.
And Me Too has proven and validated her statement. And
Yeah.
now America has no choice but to confront this and address these issues.
Mm.
The Me
Yep.
Too movement is giving women, a voice,
Yeah.
which has been suppressed for so many years. And also, too, like male privilege is being challenged.
Yes.
So if
Mhm.
male privilege is being challenged because women is actually gaining a voice, that is huge. That is powerful.
Mhm.
That is like I want to say, an attempt on overthrowing the patriarchy.
Yeah. Yep.
And that, I mean, to me, I think that is the right step. We're going in the right direction when it comes to the Me Too movements. We just need to have more. We just need to have more movements like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I couldn't agree with you more on that. It's, and I think just kind of one of the big things just recently in the news, obviously with the Weinstein case,
Hmm.
and him getting convicted. I remember reading, I believe it was a quote from Chanel Miller, who um, was Brock Turner's victim unfortunately, a couple years ago. And I'd read an article where she had said, this is like a turning point for the Me Too movement, a turning point for survivors everywhere. However, are we, as a culture, are we still going to go back in to putting our heads in the sand when these things are still going on? Or are we going to turn and speak up when we see something that's wrong or we witness something that's wrong, you know? And her point was that, the point of it, or quote, I feel like was that, if we're just as a society still going to continue to not have these discussions around sexual violence and put our heads in the sand when we know something's going on, but not report it or not talk about it, whatever the case may be, then is it really a change, even though we've
Well,
hit a peaking point?
well, what we need, I totally agree with that quote.
Mm-hmm.
We need to really build a coalition. We need to unify in order to seek these changes, to be a change
Mm-hmm.
agent. We can't do it with just the Me Too. We
Nope.
need I'm a Survivor. We need Voices of Hope. We need
Mm-hmm.
other organizations to stand together with the Me Too in order to affect change.
Yep. No, exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. And that's also one of the big reasons, that this podcast even came to be is just, there are so many amazing organizations out there, and I think people deserve to hear about them because,
Yes.
we don't come, I mean, on a day-to-day basis, I mean, me and you might come across other organizations like ours, but
Hmm.
that also is because we might be looking for them where
Yeah.
others might not be. Um, so no, I couldn't agree with you more on that statement of what you said, how we need to more come together as organizations, as a community together to raise our voice. So I think that's really important. Um, well, let's take a switch. I really was glad we kind of talked about those things, just kind of, what you were saying about the stigmas and talking about our culture. Tell us a little bit more about your organization, some of the campaigns you do. Tell us a little bit about more what your organization does and resources they provide.
Well, so I'm real big on self-care. So I try to offer virtual self-care exercises,
Okay.
online support groups that focus around self-care.
Nice.
I try to mimic the support group that I had joined.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, so we'll talk about the stigmas. We'll talk about um, how African American women, like the roots, the history behind these rape stigmas and stereotypes. But
Okay.
I'm doing the Clothesline Project, and I
Okay.
don't know if you heard about that, but it's a way to bring awareness to the issue of women, men, and children being
Okay.
survivors of either sexual violence or domestic violence. And what you'll do is you'll express your emotions by decorating T-shirts, and
Yeah.
then like you'll have like an exhibit,
Yeah.
and you'll invite like the public to come view these T-shirts.
Okay. That's
So
very
that's
cool.
yeah, that's one thing that I'm going to implement hopefully soon after after we're done with the corona isolation. Um, but also too, like the annual I'm a Survivor conference to
Yeah.
celebrate survivors. I think that's so necessary to celebrate them so that they know that they're not alone and that we
Hmm.
appreciate them and that, we're here to help them during their healing journey.
Yeah.
But the support groups, I think, is very crucial. Like I said,
Hmm.
I think that we're all made up of love and we're all made up of community. So
Hmm.
I think support groups is necessary when you are trying to heal or when
Yep.
you're trying to walk into walk with this new identity as a survivor. Like
Mhm.
you need a group of people to love
Yeah.
on you. You need a
Mhm.
group of people to encourage you when you don't feel like getting up doing anything. You
Yeah.
need people to be there for you because this walk is so difficult. I mean,
Mhm.
I didn't realize that I was dying to my old self until I became a part of this, support group.
Yeah.
And they told me, like, everything has changed now. And this is
Mhm.
like you're not the same person. So I
Yep.
want to be around people who are walking that walk too.
Yeah. That's I think that's great that you're starting that, and it's interesting when you had said, because I feel the same way when you said about how you were dying trying to live through the old you, and
Yes.
I I cannot resonate with that, and like I resonate with that so much just because I remember like for so long I tried to like try to get back to the normal that was before the trauma happened, before the rape
Yeah,
happened, and you can't.
you really cannot. And that's the thing, like, and that's why I think you really need to have support groups,
Mhm.
because everyone is trying to break through into this new identity. And
Yeah.
I mean, I like for me, like I said, it was hard, and I
Mhm.
tried so hard to go back to that old me, and it just like, no, no,
Yeah.
this is your new you. This is your new normal. Deal with
Yep.
it. Come on,
Yep.
deal with it. Come on. And it's so funny because the crazy part, I remember I had stopped going to church because
Mhm.
I'm really huge on church, but when this happened to me, I had stopped going.
Yeah.
I think I took like a 2-month hiatus.
Oh, wow,
And
yeah.
then the first time I came back, like the first church session that I came back, I think it was Bible study.
Mhm.
My pastor preached, "I'm a survivor." That was the name of his sermon. And
Wow.
he spoke directly to me.
Wow.
And I cried, I broke down, and I was like, you know what? That's the name of my organization.
I love it. That's really powerful.
Yeah.
It's just and it's crazy how people speak to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, especially in that kind of scenario where someone is speaking to a whole group community of individuals and that message is made for you.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Uh, that
Yeah.
that 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 gave me chills. That's so amazing that that's where you got your organization name. That's wonderful. Um,
Yeah.
well, talking a little bit about self-care, obviously right now in the world that we're living in, we are living with COVID-19, the coronavirus, and you know, I'm just saying this because we're in first week of really practicing social distancing
Mm-hmm.
while recording this episode. So obviously, I kind of wanted to touch on this just briefly. So with self care, obviously self care is going to be really important for individuals that are practicing social distancing and have to be in self isolation right now. Um, let's touch on this before we go into self-care around it. But how do you feel how do you feel that the coronavirus is affecting individuals that have experienced sexual violence or even domestic violence? Just your perspective on it.
Well, I think that now that resources are really scarce, like going to support group sessions,
Yep.
like, and they're forced to be isolated or distanced from people, like that
Mhm.
gives them time to think about those things that have occurred, like the
Mhm.
trauma. And that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
That is truly unhealthy, to be alone and to think about trauma and to think about, oh, what if I would have did this? Like,
Mhm.
so many feelings could just happen. You could get depressed, you can
Mhm.
become suicidal. Um, so I think this is a bad time for survivors right now,
Yeah.
survivors of sexual assault. And as far as domestic violence, like, we don't know if those survivors
Mhm.
are still living with their abusers. So that's
Mhm.
another thing that's alarming too.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I think, like, right now, and if anything, survivors are kind of catching hell.
Mhm. Oh yeah. No, I couldn't agree. That and that day I can't imagine. Like I said, I mean, I've been in a place before, and I'm sure you have, where you have been alone and you are
trying to work through your thoughts. But, a lot of times when you're alone and you're still even very early in your healing process, it
Mm-hmm.
can be difficult to get out of those thoughts. And as you get further along, it gets easier. But, in times like this, it could get you back into that initial, almost first healing phase again. Um,
Right, right. And
you
then
know,
also too, what about the women who are actually being assaulted now?
Yep.
Like there's nothing available to them right now because we're shut down. We're on
Yeah.
lockdown. So
Yep.
what can we do? I mean, like right now it's just it's a bad time for
hmm
survivors.
It is. Well, and to kind of touch back to some of the self-care, like the support groups and whatnot you're doing, can you tell us a little bit about um, the self-care, like the community groups that you have, so our listeners know that, especially, and I'm not saying that it's just for this time. This self-care is for any time, but I mean, I think this is a really hard time that we are going through with the coronavirus and social distancing and self-isolation, that self-care is the utmost important thing that you can do, to not to keep yourself healthy, like literally
Mm-hmm.
keep yourself healthy. So tell us a little bit more about, how one could find your community groups. How do they become part of them? Where, where all would one go to be a part of your community groups, and what can they expect to?
Okay. So right now I do exercises on Twitter. I try to do them like 3 times a day on Twitter, and
Nice.
that's on at my personal Twitter, um, a diva lawyer. That's
Awesome.
one.
Okay.
But I plan on, I think next week I'm going to coordinate online self-care exercises through my website. And
Nice.
that and that's going to be, I don't know if I want to do it weekly or if I should do it every day, because
Okay.
right now I'm so busy
Yeah,
with
I get
work
it.
and school. But
Mhm.
I think that I should be able to devote at least an hour of self-care exercise for a support group. I think
That's
that
wonderful.
because it's vital right now.
Mhm.
It's
Yep.
really vital. And even though we can't actually like meet, we can always do it online,
Yeah.
and we can always talk on social media, or even having like a hotline,
Mhm.
just to talk to someone, because even although there's exercises, just talking or just listening is another way to
Yep.
another form of self-care.
No, exactly. That's wonderful. Well, and the one thing too is when you do have that up, obviously we will be more than happy to share that information out with our
Yeah,
community as well.
it's so
So no,
funny
I
because
think
I
that's
was
great.
really thinking about that. I was like, I probably need to do an online self-care, because a lot of people came to me like on Twitter, like, what are we going to do? Like self-care, like grounding, like,
Mhm.
what can we do to make this okay right
Yep.
now or be comfortable? And I'm like, we just probably need to do a online self-care.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, no, I think that's great. And I think that's really imperative too, to have that virtual, have that online, um, just with the state that we're in right now. So, and then also too is, this is something I think that we're all going to get through together. But once we're out of, this self-isolation and social distancing, even still keeping virtual, if you choose to do so, is still very,
Hmm.
a great way for individuals still to stay connected in a support group.
Definitely. And it also helps to get other survivors from globally, from all
hmm
over, to
Yep.
participate too.
No, exactly. Um, so let's I wanted to ask this, and I'm asking it now just because you had touched on it briefly a moment ago, and I know you had mentioned with work and everything else, it's just an extremely busy time. So I always like to find out a little more about you outside of I'm a Survivor Inc. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what your hobbies are? Tell us a little more about Rashonda.
Okay, so I am pursuing a doctorate in trauma studies.
Woo woo, that's
So,
awesome. You go.
so
Like
I'm really
seriously.
busy with that. I'm so busy with
Oh,
research and trying to understand like what route I want to take as far as with trauma. If I want to focus mainly on sexual assault, or if I want to focus on self-defense and sexual assault. It's
Yeah.
just I'm trying to get everything condensed so I can
Mm-hmm.
start writing.
Yeah.
So then my full-time job, I'm a patent analyst. So I went to school for electrical engineering and patent law. So
Okay.
I do that. And
Nice.
that's not my passion, unfortunately. My passion is my organization,
Yeah.
but I have to survive. So I go there and I work there 40 hours a week.
So
And I
you
mean,
are
they're good to
busy.
me. They're very
Yeah.
good to me. It's really it's a different a work environment that I'm used
Mm-hmm.
to, but they're really good to me, and
Okay.
they're understanding. I also have two online boutiques, one for
Nice.
crocheting and one
Okay.
for holistic healing, because I love the herbs. I love
Yeah.
essential oils. I love Reiki. I love all those
That's
natural healing.
amazing. Oh, that's
Yeah, so
amazing.
that's what I like to do. I don't know if it's just um I just keep myself busy. I don't know if I keep myself busy because of the trauma,
Uh-huh.
but it
Yeah.
makes it's easy for me.
Yep. Yeah. Wow. Well, I commend you for everything that you're doing. One, I think it's wonderful what you're doing with your, getting your degree,
Thank you.
running the organization, having a full-time job. And then two, in a few moments when we're going to share obviously all like your website, your social media handles. I want you to share, your boutiques too as well, because I think some of that is very important. Especially the one where, you were talking about holistic healing. I think that's really important and such a great tool for survivors for self-care purposes.
Mhm.
So I'd really love for you to share that when we do that. I have to tell you though, and this is one of the crazy things that really blows my mind from talking to individuals that have an organization is pretty much everybody I've spoken to has a full-time job and and doing this on the side, and it is just it blows my mind because I know that this is some like what everybody is doing, what you're doing with I'm a Survivor Inc. And like you even said, that's your passion, that's what drives you, and it just it fills my heart with joy, truthfully, because it's amazing to see the hard work that you're putting in on a daily basis in your own job, but also going to school, but really, really putting your passion into I'm a Survivor Inc. So that's why I commend you so much for what you're doing. And that's why
Thank
I
you.
remember you're welcome. And I just, even with Voices of Hope, like for myself, there are moments where before I started doing this podcast, I thought to myself, it's like, I just don't know how other people do it. Like, because it's a struggle. I mean,
It really is. But this is what I believe. I believe that, you know, God puts visions
yep,
and missions inside of you, and all you have to do is give birth to that vision and start planning, and God will equip you with with the needs.
yep,
Like, that's all you
exactly.
have to do. So even though there's all this, like, we're busy doing X, Y, and Z,
Mm-hmm.
God will give us what we need so that we can complete his mission on
Yep.
our journey.
That's you said that very beautifully. That's exactly, you nailed it. I think that's great. But yeah, so it definitely and you're right, it is. It's God's mission. It's what he wants us to what God wants us to do, and um yeah, it does. It fills my heart with joy. I hope that doesn't sound corny, but it
No, 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 not at all.
it literally does. Okay, so a couple other things that I did want to make sure we touched on is um obviously I feel like a lot of survivors that I've spoken with or have worked with, you know, also kind of can have that same drive where they want to do something. It may be starting an organization of their own, or it may be being part of an organization, or it may be, doing something, but it's the actual starting something. So what I wanted to ask you, Rashonda, is so that when you were starting Survivors Inc. or I'm a Survivor Inc., I'm sure that there were some challenges that you faced. Can you tell us a little bit about any challenges that you might have faced when you started I'm a Survivors Inc.?
Oh yeah, definitely. Finding dedicated people with the same passion as you.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could not find anyone that was willing to work as hard as me. And I
Yeah.
think it's because they weren't actual survivors.
Yeah.
So they couldn't understand why I was so passionate. I mean, I had people say, "Oh yeah, I'll help," but then when it came time to help, they're nowhere to be found.
Yep.
The only time that they're available or ready to be found is when you're actually done the work, and
Mm-hmm.
it's time to go live or to show or to accept an award or whatever the case may be. That's when they're
They're
available.
there.
But the work behind the scenes, the groundwork, oh, never there.
Yep.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. That's
Another
frustrating.
another thing too, of course, is time.
Mm-hmm.
Time. Like if you're working full time, um, you honestly you can't sleep 8 hours.
No.
You cannot, because most of the time you're working, but also you got to put that time into the organization too. So I'm saying 4 or 5 hours of sleep,
Yeah.
and then you're on the go again. And then
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I'm always thinking of the organization, even when I'm working my 40-hour job. I'm
Mm-hmm.
always wondering, like, what can I do for this person? How can I be accessible to that person? What can I do to have resources available for people? Like, I'm always thinking that.
Yep. Yeah. It's definitely
And
always
then
something constant.
currently, when I'm having issues with is venues. I
Okay.
feel like I can't find a good place to
Yeah.
have support groups, because when you have support groups, you got to make sure that they're secure and that
Mm-hmm.
the survivors feel comfortable and safe. And
Yep.
I can't find any good places that
Oh.
that I would feel safe in having a support group.
Oh wow. Oh, I'm sorry you're struggling with that piece of it. That
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I'm like,
yeah.
and it could just be me just being overly paranoid,
Mm-hmm.
but I just can't find anywhere that's safe right
Yeah.
now.
Well, you know, it will happen because it's
Yes.
gonna happen. But I get it because in the moment and trying to find something, I know it's definitely probably frustrating just trying to
Yes.
find that venue. No, thank you for sharing some of those challenges. And I like to share that because I just know from my own perspective of don't get me wrong, I didn't go into starting or an organization thinking that everything was going to just work perfectly, but I just like to share that so that everybody has a different perspective, everybody faces different challenges, and
Oh,
so
I have
yeah,
another challenge.
yeah,
Fear.
mm,
That's another one too,
yep,
because fear will you'll get in your own way because of fear.
hmm,
You'll be scared that, oh, what if this don't work or this fails, or what if, I'm not taken seriously. That's another one. So being able to get over that fear or getting out of your own way,
yep,
um, is a struggle. It's a
yeah.
possible struggle.
That's a really good one, and I think that even goes back to that little voice inside your head that's
Mm-hmm.
always feeding you negativity, you know?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
um, that does not help the fear at all. And so, no, that's definitely a huge challenge, I think, for anybody. Thank you for sharing that. Um, okay, so we're gonna do one final question, and then we're going to share, all the ways that we can get in touch with I'm a Survivor Incorporated. And so the one final question I did want to ask you today, Rashonda, is what inspires you to keep going?
What inspires me to keep going? So I think when I open my eyes
Mm-hmm.
and I know that God has blessed me with another day, that inspires me to keep going, because
Yeah.
that's another day that God blessed me
Mm-hmm.
to help someone, to encourage another woman, to empower a woman, to educate a community on sexual assault awareness.
Yeah.
Also, As long as we live in a patriarchal society, I will
Mhm.
always be inspired to do this work.
Yep.
Bottom line.
That's wonderful. Oh, man, and like you said, it's just getting up out of bed every like and being alive. That's wonderful that's where it starts. So, no, thank
Mm-hmm.
you for sharing your inspiration.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So we do unfortunately do have to wrap up our conversation, but one thing I want to make sure that we do share with our listeners is tell us what would be how's the best way to get in contact with I'm a Survivor Inc. And then if you could also share with us your website and your social media handles.
Okay. So the best way to get a hold of me, I'm just going to give everyone my cell phone number.
Okay. As long as you're good with that, I'm totally
Yes.
fine with that too.
It's 248-238-7890.
Okay.
And you can reach me text or you can call. Doesn't
Perfect.
matter.
Okay. Perfect. Good.
And my website is www.imasurvivorinc.us.
Perfect. Okay.
And social media, for Instagram and Twitter, they're I'm a Survivor Inc.
Okay.
I don't have Facebook. Well, I do have Facebook, but I can't get into Facebook for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe somebody need to teach me about Facebook. I really cannot get into it. I tried and I'm like, what is going on? It's just so weird to me.
You're funny because I'm like actually the opposite. I do the Instagram and the Facebook, and then the Twitter's the one that I struggle with. I'm
Really?
like,
Well,
yes.
maybe you got to show me how to do Facebook then.
No,
'Cause
we
I
should
really,
swap. Yeah, you teach me about Twitter, I'll teach you about Facebook, and then we'll be perfect.
okay.
uh, so the other thing, just to let our listeners know, is we will have all of this information for you. You'll find actually I'm a Survivor Inc. on our resources page, on Voices of Hope's resources page. We also, in the corresponding blog post as well, will list all of the contact information that Rashonda gave us today, the social media handles, and then I also want to make sure that I include there as well how to find your boutiques too. So I'll make sure we include that in the blog too. So one, we just want to thank everybody for listening today. We hope you enjoyed our episode and learning about I'm a Survivor Inc. and having the opportunity to learn from Rashonda about the organization. Rashonda, thank you so much for being here with us today. I can't thank you enough, and we appreciate your time so
No, thank you
much.
for having me. I appreciate it, and I hope that I'm able to help whoever is out there that needs my help.
No, wonderful. Well, like I said, thank you all again for listening today. We really appreciate it. We hope that if you like what you heard today, we hope that you subscribe to us, share the podcast with your friends, those that you think might need this information, and those that even just want to be educated as well and learn more about different resources that are out there. So we're really excited to have you back with us next week for our next episode. And until then, we'll see you then. Have a great week, everyone.